Hey there. Good afternoon, good evening. So, I am going live a different time than I normally do. I normally live stream early here at 7 a.m. on the West Coast here in the United States. And this week, we have here in the US, we have had daylight savings time change. So essentially, we spring forward an hour, which means all of us are sleep deprived for at least a week. And so the thought of getting up at 7 a.m., which for me would feel like 6 a.m., which would mean I have to get up much earlier than that to hit that go live button was a little more than I could I could bear. Plus, I don't know how many of you, I'm guessing some of you in if you're in the US, most of the states except for Arizona. I live in Nevada, so we are bordering Arizona, and in the fall and in the spring, I have Arizona envy when because Arizona does not do time change. Which to me, I know most of us are like, why are we doing this time change? But I don't know. In where are you from? So if you're joining me live, go ahead and post your name in the comments. Let's see who's here. Post where you're from. I know over in the UK, you guys do the time change. I think you do it at a different time than we do. We just did it last Saturday, which here in the US would be Saturday, March 12th, I think. I think it was the 12th. I have to remind myself. I'm Kathy Spooner. Today is Wednesday. It's just the time change just knocks everything out of whack. So for that reason, I decided to go live later in the afternoon. So 5:30 p.m. here on the West Coast, and might be some of you watching on the other side of the world. For me, it might be Thursday morning for you. So let's hear from you. If you're watching live, go ahead and post your name in the comments. Do you do daylight savings change, time change? How was that for you? I dread it. Not at all a fan at all. And when my kids were little, holy cow, kids do not adjust to time change. Dogs do not adjust for time change. So it usually took quite a while to make that adjustment. So today I want to talk about the benefits of using expressive arts. How many of you, and if you're watching on the replay, go ahead and post your name in the comments as well. Post where you're from. Are you currently working with adolescents? And do you use expressive arts? Also, if you're working with adults, do you use expressive arts with adults? A lot of the ways in which I use expressive arts, I'll also use them with adults as well, especially if I'm working with adults who have a lot of trauma and attachment wounds in their history. I find it a really effective way to help the adults that I work with process through some of that unresolved trauma and some of that grief left over from childhood. You can see in my background here, I have a lot of my sand tray miniatures. I love using sand tray miniatures and the sand tray with my adult clients, as well as my adolescent clients. And that's the thing for me. I'm a play therapist. I'm a registered play therapist supervisor. So I love using play therapy. The thing is, if I'm working with adolescents, what does that even look like? And one of the foundational principles of play therapy is helping our clients to access those therapeutic powers of play. So if you're working with adolescents and you use a play therapy modality, how do you do that? How do you use play therapy with adolescents? And for me, one of the ways that I have found very helpful is to use expressive arts. So That would be the sand tray. I like to use art. You can use music. I love using poetry. All of those. And if you dance, movement, drama therapy, all of those are also expressive arts. Play therapy is an expressive art as well, technically. So how do you help your adolescent clients engage in that change process? And do expressive arts even work? Do they make a difference? Like, why bother? Why don't I just use traditional talk therapy? So if you're watching, go ahead, post your name in the comments. I am Kathy Spooner. I'm a licensed clinical social worker and registered play therapist supervisor here in the United States with about 30 years experience working in the mental health field with children, adolescents, and families. And for the past 20 years, I've used a predominantly play therapy approach. And so I'll integrate in expressive arts into that framework as well. And why though? Why bother? To me, that's the big point, is why would I use expressive arts with my adolescent clients? And that's what I want to talk about today. What are the benefits? Have you heard of expressive arts? What expressive arts modalities do you use? Hey, Stephanie, I'm so glad you could join us today. So, Stephanie, are you using expressive arts? Are you working with adolescents? And to me, what are the benefits if you're using expressive arts? What's the point? Why use them? And what I found is the benefit of using expressive arts is to provide a way for clients to go to those deeper levels that they may not necessarily be able to access with their cognitive, insightful parts of their brain. That can be sometimes challenging to do if you're using a predominantly talk modality and you're getting to maybe some of those early childhood experiences or experiences that your client hasn't really fully processed through. So Stephanie said, yes, she uses expressive arts and she works with youth and adults. I love using expressive arts with my adult clients as well. I find it really, really powerful. Um, so, so the benefit of, to me, if I'm used, there are different schools of thought for using expressive arts, and to me, as long as it's got some grounding in theory and some research behind it, I don't think um, we can do too much harm. I don't think one is necessarily more right than the other, meaning is a directive approach using expressive arts more effective and a better approach than using non-directive? And I don't necessarily think that. And I talked about that in one of my previous live episodes. So if that's of interest, you may want to go check out one of those. I think the main point is, what kind of framework am I using with clients, and what is my reason for using it with them? And I've found that framework is really, really useful. So to me, if I'm using a framework and my framework is, how do I help my clients access those therapeutic powers of play? I will often use a directive approach with adolescents and adults in the beginning, because it helps them to engage more effectively. From there, I kind of see where it goes and what they need. The thing is, though, what makes expressive arts, whether we're doing it in a directive manner or a non-directive manner, what makes it effective? And one of the ways that I found expressive arts to be helpful is it really helps to bypass those logical areas, those areas of what's going on and that I don't necessarily have words to express, and they can be accessed through the expressive arts. So, to me, one of the benefits is self exploration. I like using a neuroscience and attachment lens, especially if we're doing some of that self exploration, because I want to help them access what are those shame based or beliefs that might be triggering their anxiety and or their depression, and maybe creating problems in their relationship. If I want to do some of that more directive approach, I can use the neuroscience and attachment lens to help me kind of conceptualize what the problem is, and then using expressive arts like Santre or art, then you can help your client really more fully explore that, accessing some of those sensory aspects of the issue that they're dealing with. So self-exploration, and adolescence is really a time of self-exploration, so that they get a sense of who they are as separate and unique individuals to help them launch out into the world. And so we can have them do some self exploration using art. We can have them do a self portrait. We can have them do a dual self portrait. We can have them explore values. We can have them explore cognitive distortions. What would that look like? What would it sound like? And when they're able to use expressive arts, then you get a much deeper understanding of the experience. And I believe it does help your clients feel seen and feel heard. And how critical is that for the change process, for your client to feel seen by you, that you witness whatever that pain is that they're working through, that they feel heard and understood by a compassionate other person. That's part of that deep healing process that can take place using expressive arts, because now it's not just inside of them, it's outside of them, and you're both witnessing it in that session. And so that is a really, really powerful tool. So if you, I mean, imagine your adolescent clients being able to access some of those deeper areas of their emotions and their experiences using those therapeutic powers of play through the art, such as self exploration, to help them identify those shame beliefs. That gives you, now you're both on kind of like the same page, and you're understanding what it's like to walk in their shoes, so to speak. And now they can experience you in that way. So the thing you have to keep in mind, though, is the pacing of that, because sometimes you have to go at the client's pace, because that might be a little too overwhelming for them, which to me is why it's nice to use that neuroscience and attachment lens to help you identify when your client is feeling unsafe in the session. What does that look like? And then you can change the pace a little bit, and using a neuroscience and attachment framework to guide you through that process can help you with figuring out when your client is ready to do what. If you're doing more of a directive, if you're doing more non-directive, then they're the ones leading the way in that regard. So I have a training that I have now online. It's called Expressive Arts in Play Therapy with Adolescents. And one of the things I have in the training is really understanding those mental health things that they're struggling with from a neuroscience and attachment lens, and then using neuroscience and attachment to help you establish that therapeutic rapport to help you figure out what's going on with your clients. And then that will help you identify what kind of interventions you may want to use using expressive arts. I have a lot of different activities in that course that I talk about. How can you use art? How can you use music? How can you use poetry? How do you make that mind-body connection of even self-exploration of how does your client experience their emotions in their body? What does that look like? Where are they sensing it? Where are they feeling it? How are they feeling it? What's the intensity of how they're feeling it? Because a lot of times our clients have kind of disconnected emotionally, and they don't even know how they feel those emotions in their body. So if you're using expressive arts, that's a way to help them reconnect with that mind body connection. And then that helps, that kind of provides the foundation for using some directive approaches for coping skills, using mindfulness, using art in a mindful way, using music in a mindful way. All of those ways of helping your client explore how do they experience their emotions and how can they manage those emotions more effectively. So the other one is self-expression. How can you use expressive arts like art or music or chantre or dance or movement or poetry for them to be able to express what's going on, and that helps them feel seen and heard by another, which for adolescents, they're really trying to figure out some of those things, and being able to have that safe and secure space where they can do some of that exploration. And how many adults do you work with who maybe have a history of trauma or have a history of addiction or have some significant attachment wounds? And so they may be 30 years old, and maybe socially and emotionally, they may be more like a 16-year-old, or maybe a 20-year-old who's maybe socially and emotionally more like a 16-year-old. So the social emotional aspects of their overall functioning are really important to think about, which is to me why it's really important to understand the developmental aspects of what's going on with our clients. And I like to, in my expressive arts training, I do talk about the developmental aspects of not only that social emotional development, but also how do you see development in art? Because sometimes the way in which our clients are using art, you can see some of the themes in the art may be showing a younger social emotional age. I see that a lot with like the younger kids, like maybe middle school and elementary school and adolescents a lot. Not quite as much with adults, and still there may be some of that in there. So to me, it's important to think about that as well when I'm working with the clients, because it's important to understand what's going on for them with their use of art technically. So what I mean by that is the theory is given the free and protected space, your clients will naturally move towards healing and wholeness. So if you're providing them with the tools such as expressive arts, then we trust the process that they will naturally move towards healing and wholeness. Then there's the practical aspect of being a mental health professional, and I need to have an idea of where they are in the treatment process. I need to be able to document in the notes what's going on. I need to be able to identify with their treatment plan. Are they meeting their treatment goals? So there's the theoretical aspect, and then there's, I call it the practical aspect. And it's important to as they are using expressive arts for that self-expression, then as mental health professionals, we're kind of seeing where they are in that process. And using art and using Santre is a great way for clients to express themselves. I'll often use music, because what teenager doesn't like music? It is the rare. I have had some teenagers who don't really like music. Most of them do. So to me, especially in the early stages, asking my clients, especially the ones that don't want to talk and they look at you like, oh my God, when do I get out of here? I'll usually ask them about their favorite group. I'll pull up YouTube. We'll look up some of their songs, and I like to try and pull the ones up with the lyrics too, because to me, the song lyrics are poetry and it's a way of self-expression. We've used music for self-expression for generations. Music has been a powerful way for adolescents to express what's going on for them. So being able to use music in that way and have them feel seen and heard in the session can be really, really powerful. And access to the unconscious. This is one of the therapeutic powers of play. I can bypass some of those cognitive areas and go right into those intuitive places and express what's going on using expressive arts. Your client can do that as well. So I can't tell you how many times I have sat with adult clients and I've asked them, how did they feel? Or we've explored some of their shame-based beliefs through talking, and they just can't find the right words. And I will invite them to use the figure or figures that best represent what that's like. And I'll usually do a little, it doesn't always make sense, so I'll do a little coaching around that. And then eventually they'll do that. They will put those that symbolic representation in the Santre, and then we begin to process that. And pretty much every single time we are pulling out the Kleenex box, because as we go there, as we see it in symbolic representation, it becomes what was unconscious is now conscious and ready to be explored. And that's a really powerful thing. The adolescents will do that in a different way. They will still do it though. They will be able to identify some of those core beliefs that have been causing them anxiety, causing them to feel like bad kids. And then you can use art to help them do some of that cognitive restructuring, to help them come up with positive affirmations, to create art around positive affirmations, to create poetry, or to create music lyrics, to create a playlist of music to listen to that will help shift their mood. And those are really powerful tools to be able to have in your toolbox to help your clients be able to access what is not conscious. And then when it becomes conscious, then you can help them do some of that cognitive restructuring, as well as help them to develop some coping tools. So those are, and then finally, the fourth thing to me that is beneficial about using expressive arts, especially with adolescents, because the therapeutic powers of play, one of the benefits is that ability to engage in fun and playfulness, and that helps to strengthen relationships. It helps to strengthen therapeutic rapport. It helps them to feel safe enough to go to those vulnerable places in the session. But you can always also have some playfulness and fun in the session too, so it's not always so heavy. I find with adolescents, sometimes if it's too heavy, too much, it's really challenging for them to really work through and come out on the other end with resiliency. That's the goal, building some of that resiliency as they are overcoming the challenges that they're dealing with. So having fun in the session is important. Helping them have fun in their relationships, helping them have fun with their peers and their parents. That's a really important part of life. It's important for us as therapists as well. So the expressive arts, to me, the part about having it fun and being engaging is what helps. It's kind of like the glue that keeps them able to tolerate the change process. So that is it for today. Stephanie, I'm curious, what expressive arts do you use with your clients? Do you use art or music or dance, even movement or poetry? I'm curious what type of expressive art you use. And do you have a favorite? So just as a recap, expressive arts, the benefits of expressive arts is that you can help your client access those therapeutic powers of play so that they can do some self-exploration of what is going on with them. They can access self-expression to feel seen and heard as they're working through that individuation process, figuring out who they are, figuring out their relationships, figuring out how to navigate people in the world, and access to the unconscious, where they may not be, well, they're probably not aware of what it is that's causing them to feel anxious and depressed. And people who self-harm, being able to understand what that's about and to witness their pain in a way that's safer for them and to help them express and connect with their emotions in a more healthy manner. You can use expressive arts to do that. So though that is it for today. If you are interested, I do have a course called Expressive Arts in Play Therapy with Adolescents. In the course, this is more of a directive approach. In this one, I do take a much deeper dive into exploring and understanding neuroscience and attachment, and that the ways in which that may show up with some of the mental health issues going on, like with behavior. What is that behavior all about? If clients are, if you have an adolescent client who's surly and moody and maybe arguing all the time, what's going on with that? If your adolescent client is depressed, what's activating that depression? How can you help them develop some skills for managing that depression more effectively? Being able to use expressive arts to explore those core beliefs. And that helps to facilitate a healthy adolescent development. And you can use art to help them do that. So the goal is always to help your adolescent clients to launch into healthy young adults. And sometimes they can get kind of stuck in that adolescent exploration process, maybe even get a little bit lost. And you can use art and music and some of the other expressive arts to help them navigate through that. And so if in the course, I'll use more of an attachment and neuroscience lens to understand what's going on. And then to me, that also helps you with some of the solutions, which is what kind of expressive arts, how can I use expressive arts? What kind of directive activities will be helpful for your client to deal with the issues that they're dealing with? And so I use a neuroscience framework, a neuroscience and attachment framework for that in the course as well. So lots and lots of ideas, lots of good framework to help you navigate through that. Lots of things that you can use with your clients right away. So if you're interested in that course, you can go to my website, which is rrhcounseling.com/courses. And that is it. Next week, I plan on going live at the regular time again at 7 a.m. So if you found this helpful, please like it and share it on your social media. I go live on LinkedIn, my Facebook group, Play and Expressive Arts Therapy Playground. So if you're interested in that group, you can go over to that Facebook group, and you will have to answer questions in order to be admitted into the group. And I also live stream onto my YouTube channel. So if you ever wanted to watch any of the replays and you're not in my group, the YouTube channel is probably the easiest way to be able to do that. All of the replays for all of my live episodes are on my YouTube channel. I don't have any pre-recorded yet. That's a goal. I haven't gotten there yet. So if you're, I will see you next week. Bye. Oh. It's not. Have to please check your internet. Is it out?